Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be going through Conspiracy and the Subject of Lacanian Enterprise, the first chapter of my book. Now, you can of course find the book in the description if you wanted to buy it yourself, but we're going to be continuing on the series of where I break down some of the most important themes and aspects of chapters. Now, chapter 1. What have we established in the introduction? Well, we've established that there is such thing as deception with a capital D. Deception with a capital D, to run this through again, is the point of where the big other's ability to have grasp over the subject, have grasp over their desires and such, is incomplete. It is that gap between the completeness of the big other and the non-completeness. Now, for the conspiratorial subject, they believe that the big other is complete. They believe that there is full grasp of the big other, symbolic authorities in society, over their desires and how they act in the world. Now, this point that they believe that the big other is all powerful introduces a point of deception, right? They believe that the big other deceives them from a place of all powerfulness, that is, the conscious agents, a part of these symbolic authorities, media, government, so media reporters, government actors. The conspiratorial subject believes that they are all together and they're pushing the sense of deception. Now, the true deception is the fact that the big other is incomplete, that these events like 9/11 and such are not conspiracies, but they arrive in the incompleteness and the gap between the big other's completeness. In the sense, for instance, we're going to get into this later, but 9/11 will be a clear discussion. So, with that out of the way, sort of a recapitulation of the introduction. Of course, you can check that out if you want to go through that. We're going to be hopping into the chapter 1. Now, chapter 1 begins looking at Freud's case study of Leonardo da Vinci, where Freud found that there is this investigative drive, this drive towards investigation, towards curiosity, that begins in childhood and ends with this point of a question being answered. Namely, that question is, where do children come from, right? And this point of the question is this looming question that develops over childhood. And, you hear various stories. You hear the stork story. You hear Made in a Factory. In America, we have Cabbage Patch Babies, a literal establishment where parents take their children. And the point is to be like, you are born here, or at least you weren't born here, but you were born in a similar Cabbage Patch, right? It's the simulation, creating this intricate fiction to try and repress the true truth that, no, you came from your parents, right? So this point, recognizing, when the child recognizes this truth, this creates a breaking. Now, this breaks their investigative drive. They no longer have this clear drive to go out in the world and be curious, and, children want to, walk around with magnifying glasses and look at bees and look at dirt and, oh, there's worms, Once you reach this point, Freud believes, there is no longer this drive towards investigation, because the drive towards investigation was leading to this point. Now, what I say is that, okay, the conspiratorial drive, or what we're calling the conspiratorial drive, is a sort of is an aspect of the investigative drive. It's just the way that adults manifest it, for instance. So I say the conspiratorial drive, it continues beyond childhood. It doesn't just end, right? This is how conspiracies, they're driving towards some ultimate mystery. Oh, what are the secrets of the world to be revealed? So that is what I see the conspiratorial drive as. Now, the next major part, after going through some explanations of Lacan, for instance, what is the big other? We've discussed that, right? What is the real? Well, the real for Lacan is this point of, it's very difficult to explain the real for Lacan, but I'm going to try. So the real for Lacan is like this point that develops in any symbolic gesture, through any recognition of the big other. Very concrete example would be when, let's say, you go in for a handshake with your friend and they open their arms up. Something's happened, right? You two are the big other is giving you different desires, right? You're communicating through different symbolic articulations. And, there's going to be this point of awkwardness, and this point of awkwardness would be the real. There is no way to avoid the real. You can't plan on avoiding the real. right? And the real is always writing itself in the background of these articulations. Another clear one would be like, let's say that you ask someone how their day is, right? Oh, how was your day? You know, you're at a drive-thru, right? And you're talking to the worker. I've worked at Chick-fil-A for 5 years. I'm very used to, you know, this type of colloquial small talk. And you ask the worker, you ask like the person, the worker, how's your day, right? And if they respond, oh, my day's terrible. My cat died. My wife left me 2 weeks ago. Oh, I had terrible hair. You're going to be really confused. You might even get mad, right? You ask them how their day is. Why are they actually telling you about their day? What you wanted to hear was, my day's good. And you? Or, oh, I'm doing fine. And you? Oh, it's not too bad. And you? This is the real. This point of negativity, incompleteness, impossibility that is a part of all symbolic articulations, all desires being understood from the big other. Now, we've gone over the real, the big other. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get into sort of where I take Lacan's theory from here. Now, one of the important points that I make quickly is that conspiracy functions off of a psychotic mechanism. Now, for Lacan, the psychotic mechanism is the foreclosure, or Verfehlung in German, of the name of the father. The name of the father for Lacan is the point of where the father gives a point, says no, or gives a disavowing glance, or another way that then is understood by the subject to mean, and this is when the subject is in their childhood, to mean that they cannot pursue certain things, right? Like, let's say that the subject is, trying to hang out with the father, and the father's like busy working, right? Father says, no, go away, right? Something like that. And this tells the subject that they cannot be everything for the father, for the mother, for the caring parent, right? The mother has stuff to do at work, right? She goes to work, and the subject is so sad because he's like, oh no, like, oh, my mom left, right? But the subject has to recognize that they cannot be everything for the caring parent. The mother has her own things, right? Maybe she's coaching a soccer team or something, right? So this point of recognizing this is very important, and this is the end of the Oedipal complex for Lacan. The point of recognizing that you cannot be everything for the caring parent. You can't fulfill all of their desires, right? You can't be their job. You can't be the other person in their lives, right? So this is a very important part in the child development and psychoanalysis. So a psychotic subject does not recognize the name of the father. They never recognize this articulated no. For instance, maybe the father did say no, or even there is no person in their life that acted as the father, that acted in the symbolic role of father. So there was no one to say no. There was no no, which means they had like full freedom. But full freedom, as we understand from Hegel discussing the French Revolution, is in fact the dialectical mode of absolute terror, right? Robespierre in the French Revolution tried to establish absolute freedom, and as such, it returned with absolute terror. Now, Lacan doesn't make this point, but the point is there that you can never have absolute freedom. So this point of where the symbolic father doesn't say no, the subject is then caught in this dialectical sense of freedom, because yeah, they can do anything, right? There are no restrictions. They don't recognize authority. They are their own authority. But this, as such, creates absolute terror or absolute imprisonment because they cannot interact in society. They cannot engage in ethical practices. So that's psychosis, and that's the function of that in Lacan. So why do conspiracy function off this? Well, we mentioned that conspiracy is functions off of the inability to recognize that the big other is incomplete. That is, the rejection of the name of the father, or the foreclosure of the name of the father, which would, if the name of the father was accepted, this would allow the big other to be understood. The big other would be in the subject's life. The subject would have the big other, and they would be able to maintain distance from the big other. they would also be able to capitulate to its desires. But without this point, without the recognition of the no from the father, there is no big other for the subject. As such, they must create their own. And this brings us into what Lacan called the synthum. The synthum is the private law or private big other of the psychotic subject. The subject who creates their own big other as their own desires. There is no external authority to limit the subject who is a psychotic. This is just bringing us into the mode of saying that for a conspiratorial subject, for the conspiratorial subject who operates off the psychotic mechanism, there is a point where they have to create their own law. And this own law is conspiracy. Conspiracy is the private law of the conspiratorial subject. Okay, that out of the way, let's get into how do conspiracy theories spread in society. So Lacan, in some of his later dialogues, some of his later seminars, thinking Plato, Seminar 18, 19, 20, maybe after, Lacan did was he established this notion of discourses. So he noted 4 official discourses. Those are the master's discourse, the analyst discourse, the hysteric discourse, and discourse of the university. A whole video can be spent on each one of these. We're not going to do that. So I'm just going to talk about the discourse of the university because that is what applies here. Discourse of the university is Lacan's basically like not so secret diss at French universities and the university system in general. But he also says that places like Stalinist Russia can be university discourses, and you'll see why in a second. So university discourse is basically thought. I'm not going to explain the whole algebra. That's too difficult for you to imagine without seeing the actual thing written out. So university discourse is where a subject is given some sort of knowledge by a authority, by a master signifier, you can say, and this authority purports itself to be non-biased. It's like, no, we're not biased. We're looking for the truth, right? We're looking for the truth. We're not here to dispel ideology. We're here looking for the truth. And the point that Lacan wants to highlight is that underneath this notion of a purely unbiased truth that's being given from the university to the subject, there is a unconscious truth, which is the big other's desires. Which sense of a big other does the knowledge that you're being given from this university represent? A common mantra from conservatives in America is that universities are by far left-wing, right? So they would say that universities pretend to be, all non-biased, but there's this, they don't say the word unconscious truth because they don't tend to read Lacan and Freud, but they say, oh, there's this the actuality or the reality of the situation is that, no, there's actually a left-wing bias, and it's actually underlying all these things you're being taught, which is true. It is true. All universities have this. All modes of knowledge cannot be proliferated in society without having this unconscious truth from which it is given. Now, the point that this ties into conspiracy is because conspiratorial subjects, specifically what's known as alternative media online, they tend to be like, no, right, we're looking for the truth. We're like archaeologists. We're digging through the dirt. We're digging up dinosaur bones, and we're finding the truth, right? And these CNNs, Fox News, and all these media, the government, they're just giving you this biased knowledge, but we're not. We're truth seekers. We're truth finders. And the point is that this is how conspiracy spreads in society, is that subjects who already tend to be psychotic, as we already explained, have a degree of psychosis. It's not like a stable, like a one definition of psychosis, right? Which we'll get into in chapter 3, where we get to Kanye and the Kanye case study, but not there yet. But so subjects who already have a degree of psychosis are like, oh yeah, I'm against the government, man. They're giving me this biased messaging. I'm going with the alternative media. They're gonna give me the truth. They're gonna unbiased, real truth. And the point is that, no, of course not, right? There's a big other asserting the mode of knowledge that they're giving to. So that's how conspiracy theories tend to spread in society, at least now, right? We're talking in 21st century America, in the internet age. So that's sort of the main part of chapter 1. I then end chapter 1 by sort of issuing a statement. It's sort of like a, by the way, in case you think I'm missing something, I'm not. And that is that a lot of people on the left, specifically like, I'm talking like Marxist-Leninist, Maoist, people like that, people that rage about U.S. imperialism all the time, they fall into this same psychotic kind of division because they see the CIA, and you ever talk to a Marxist-Leninist or a Maoist, these people are always talking about the CIA is behind everything. Literally, they're like, no, Stalin actually was doing great, and the CIA, they came and messed everything up. So you have these people very far left, like Maoist and Marxist-Leninist, and they're like, no, the CIA is behind everything, And my point is not to say the CIA isn't behind anything, of course, right? Salvador Allende's Chilean regime was in part couped by the U.S., led by General Pinochet, right? Of course, there were quite a lot of tariffs and stuff on Cuba and the USSR, and North Korea still being tariffed. So, yeah, no, the CIA and U.S. hegemony is behind quite a bit, but it's not behind everything. It's not the big other. It's not because at that point, then the left is engaging in this deception where, we can't recognize the big other's incomplete, that the CIA doesn't have all power, so we believe that the actual incompleteness of the CIA is their conscious choosing. So that's the issue that you fall into, right? With this thing that I see a lot of again, Marxist-Leninist Maoists fall into. Now, the final point I make is a little very small mention of Evo Morales and his time as president in Bolivia. If I get it right, it was 2006 to 2019. 2019 was when the coup came in, and Janine Pirro, I believe is her name. Not entirely sure. Don't really remember it. But Evo Morales, he was accused, and the reason why this coup happened by Janine and her cronies was because he was accused of lying about the votes, doing some sort of miscount to change the vote totals. And they're like, well, the OAS, which is the American, basically, like, it's American department that looks over other countries' voting and stuff. And it's like, okay, you guys are doing it right. Maybe you're not doing it right over here. Maybe you're doing it right over here. And the OAS basically was like, no, well, the last 5% of voting count had this huge rise in voting numbers that we don't see as possible for Morales, which means that he must have cheated. Now, the point that I make is that, well, we also have, I cite external studies from MIT and stuff like that, which show that there's very easily explained. Indigenous communities and rural communities, just like in the United States, they tend to have the votes come in later than the urban places, right? So of course you're gonna have people in the rural, their votes are gonna come in later. Therefore, this could very well easily be explained, as it was by many different studies. But the point I make is that the people, the dogmatic American liberal that sees Evo Morales and it's like, oh yeah, this guy definitely cheated because he had this 5% vote surge at the end and that wouldn't be possible. And my point is that they're falling into deception as well, right? They're falling into this notion that it's actually that the big other is full and the big other purposefully chose to count votes and miscount votes at the last 5% when every American, voting agency that looks over there, Great Britain voting agencies, all these voting agencies are looking at this, right? So the point is that, the big other is just so powerful that it would choose to do this in these last 5%, and we got it, like we caught them. The point is that, of course, no, the big other is not all powerful, right? Evo Morales does not have complete omnipresent, omnipotent power over Bolivia, and therefore the voting surge was easily explained. So, again, the point of that last section, because it does take away from what I've been establishing, but it's to draw a clear point that, yeah, the left does this too. This isn't just like a right-wing thing. Conspiracies are all around. They're all around the left. They're all around the right. I would say they're more on the right, at least now, which we'll also get into later chapters. But yeah, I mean, conspiracy theories are all around, and the point is that we should try and critique them wherever they are, whether they're on the Maoist left, whether they're on the Trumpist right, you know, and or if they're dogmatic liberals, like the American dogmatic liberal. So that's kind of the end of that chapter, and yeah, I think that that's going to be a pretty good summary. I didn't go over everything in the chapter. The point is for people to go out and check out the book themselves, and so it's only 215 pages. And again, I explain a lot of Lacan in the first chapter. I explain the real, but I also give far more explicit explanations of the symbolic and clear examples for Lacan's theory of desire and drive. So it's all around a great text. Whether you've read Lacan or not, you could read the first chapter and come away pretty satisfied. You've learned a lot about Lacan just from that first chapter. So that's going to be it for the video. Go ahead and like the video and subscribe, and stay tuned for Chapter 2 of Conspiracy and the Subject, a Lacanian Enterprise.